おはようございます。新京はパイロットです。今日もマイクロソフトフライトシミュレーターの公式集会に参加していきたいと思います。今日の飛行機は、フランスですね。なんかフランス革命記念日かなんかで、今日はフランスを飛ぶみたいです。今、リヨンっていう街にいるんですけど、ここから、パリまで飛んでいきます。ここはなんかサンテクジュベリ空港っていう、名前の空港みたいなんですけど、サンテクジュベリっていうと有名な星の王子様とか夜間飛行とかっていうのを書いた、小説ですね。両方は好きな本ですけど。ということで、フランスを飛んでいきます。はい、じゃあ離陸していきますか。
As we get airborne here, there's a couple slogans that are often associated with French nationalism and the various French republics. Of course, a very famous one I'm sure a lot of people know, Vive la France. Means basically what, long live France, more or less.
Indeed, yes.
And then arguably the national motto for the country, Liberté, Égalité, Fraternité. So what can you tell our viewers about that?
Well, see, these three are basically the kind of founding principles of what we kind of built the country on. So, égalité is more, the equality. And, I mean, the three elements themselves it's kind of based off of history because what used to happen was everything was based on monarchy. And as we went forward through the different revolutions, that power slowly got transferred. So Bastille Day, we called it that for Bastille, but it was also 1 year later called like Federation Day, which was kind of like that national unity. And it was a calmer moment of the revolution. And this is where people thought, the country's political struggles would be over, and it acted as a stage of transition. And this is essentially what is representing. The king in his vow mentioned himself as the king of the French for the first time, rather than the traditional king of France. So the title was now to the people, not the territory. And this was part of the beginning of the Constitution, which would take another year to be officially ratified. But as such, that's basically what occurred, is that element of building that national identity through these three elements.
Yeah, now there's, I know we have a lot of Americans in our community, probably a lot of Americans viewing the stream right now. There is actually also a very strong connection between the United States and France in both countries' revolutions. So the U.S. revolution and its independence from Great Britain beginning in 1776, that was largely successful, whether Americans want to admit this or not, largely thanks to French help and support. Most notably from General Lafayette. That's why to this day there are many towns all over the United States, pretty much every single state, there is a town named Lafayette in recognition of the support that the French general gave the American freedom fighters during their revolution from Britain. And it was the principles of the U.S. revolution about, freedom from monarchy, government by the people, of the people, for the people. Those were the principles that inspired the French Revolution.
Saint X Tower Extra 145 frequency.
By the way, I'm just flying over a POI here in Lyon. Here is a football stadium. Cookie, do you know specifically which stadium this is, or which team plays here in Lyon?
I believe you're talking about the Parc Olympique Lyonnais, right?
Well, do you see it on the screen? Is that it's probably right.
I'm a little behind. My controller was actually unplugged, so I had to plug that in. But yes, that's one of the stadiums actually that has a lot to do. It opened in 2016, kind of a way to replace an older stadium. And this thing is cool. It hosted the 2019 FIFA Women's Cup, the World Cup. It will host the 2023 Rugby World Cup and the football for the 2024 Summer Olympics in France. Actually, fun fact about this, which I love, they actually held an outdoors ice hockey league out there in 2016. And it actually hit the all-time record attendance for an ice hockey game in France back in 2016. So bit of Canadian identity as well.
スピットファイアがおらんじゃん。スピットファイア。あ、お
All
っ
right,
た
before we depart Lyon, there is something I want to talk about here. The connection to aviation in Lyon and the Lyon airport. Lyon
並んでるところが見えないかな、スピットファイアと VF109。
Oh, we're getting some double audio. Cookie, it looks like you're broadcasting audio to the stream. So if you can mute that. So if you can mute that.
TVM ないな。
Is that better?
Okay, let's go back to Cookie's point of view. All right, check.
1, 2, 1, 2.
風強えな。
There should be no echo. All right, great.
Okay, good now. All right, very good. Yeah, so some of you in chat, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, beloved French author and also aviator. Back in the 1920s and 1930s, he was charged with creating mail routes, air mail routes. This was very new at the time. You know, we think of these things like delivering cargo by air. It's like that's super common. That happens all the time. But back, you know, in the early days of aviation, that was not quite so common. And France was the leading country developing reliable airmail service, including delivering mail overnight. And Antoine de Saint-Exupéry was a professional pilot, born here in Lyon. And he had several careers. He didn't live very long, by the way. He died in his 40s. We'll talk about that later. But in the 40 years that he was alive, he had multiple kind of different phases of his life, you know, being a pioneering aviator and then also a beloved author and poet. But he actually wrote several books about his experience as a sort of airmail pilot. Perhaps the most famous is Le Vol de Nuit, or in English, Night Flight. And that was about, it's fiction, but it's like semi-autobiographical fiction about the experience of setting up overnight mail service, airmail service in South America. In the days there were no navies, there were no VORs, you know, even reliably lit airfields was something that didn't really exist at that time. And so it was very dangerous. A lot of the air crew lost their lives all in the sake of delivering people's mail slightly faster than by other methods that existed at the time. But then yes, we see in chat, Nicotine says Le Petit Prince. Of course, that is by far his most famous work. Oh, what happened?
Oh, I'm gonna get the book. I have it.
Oh, you have it? Okay, yes.
Yeah.
So Le Petit Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. I looked this up. Not counting religious texts like the Bible or the Quran, The Petit Prince is the second highest selling book ever written. It's only surpassed in sales volume by The Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens, which incidentally also has a connection to the French Revolution, if anyone is familiar with that novel. But yes, Le Petit Prince, second best-selling book of all time, excluding religious texts. And yeah, written by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry from Lyon in France, famous, renowned, pioneering aviator and author. The Petit Prince has been translated into something like over 200 different languages. People read it all over the world. I personally read it in school. It was required reading for me as a Canadian student, you know, 20, almost 30 years ago now. And I'm sure in France it's part of the curriculum. I know we have a lot of Japanese viewers and people from the Japanese community who will wake up very early, where it's 3 a.m. right now, to join us in these flights. The Petit Prince is also very popular in Japan, and in fact, I was reading about this yesterday. There is actually the Petit Prince themed park in Japan, where they have, you know, statues and monuments of a lot of the famous characters from the book.
Actually, I can confirm one thing though, is having done my schooling as well in Canada, yes, you do get to study as well still Le Petit Prince as part of the French curriculum. I think after grade 9 you don't need to take French, but then yeah, if you follow grade 10, 11, and 12, then you'll study that as well as Viclo and some other French authors.
So Le Petit Prince was written in North America, in Canada and the United States. I'm not sure exactly which country, possibly a combination of the two. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry was in exile. This was during the Second World War, during Nazi Germany's occupation of France in the early 1940s. Saint-Exupéry fled to North America. He lived for a time in Canada, and he also lived for a time in the United States. And a lot of what he did, this is before the attack on Pearl Harbor, a lot of what he was doing was lobbying the U.S. government on behalf of France to get involved in the war effort and support the Western allies, Great Britain, France, etc., and to help liberate Europe from the grips of fascism. Then, after the U.S. joined the war in late 1941, early 1942, Saint-Exupéry, as a pilot, despite being in his 40s at this point and well over the regular age where people would be expected to serve military service, he volunteered and was a military pilot during the Second World War. He flew P-38 Lightnings, and he was on a reconnaissance flight over North Africa, I believe in what is now Morocco. At the time was a French overseas colony, now a sovereign nation. And he disappeared. He went out on a reconnaissance flight and he never came back. And only about 20 years ago, they actually discovered the wreck of his plane. They found it crashed into the Mediterranean Sea on the seafloor, and they confirmed it was in fact his plane by looking at like serial numbers and things. But they still don't know to this day what happened, whether it was a mechanical failure, pilot error, or if he was intercepted and shot down. No one knows for sure what caused his disappearance. And so yeah, he was in his early 40s when he disappeared in the Mediterranean. And what an incredible life he lived, and so many major accomplishments in such a short period of time.
You know, there's actually this theory that it would be a German pilot who himself actually was a big admirer of Saint-Exupéry, and obviously with this war there was very little records that managed to survive it, so today it's really hard to know exactly what happened, but there is at least that person is now fairly certain themselves that they believe they have shut down essentially their own idol. It's very tragic to hear.
And of course they would have no way of knowing that, right? You don't know who's flying the plane that you're shooting at.
Yeah.
Speedy.
And also, I mean, Saint-Exupéry, you know, he wrote a lot of things back in North America, some part in Quebec as well, which is interesting. But it's only when he was back in the US, when his friend told him pretty much, hey, you know what, you should relax yourself because you're sick, you're writing, you're constantly doing things, and you need to kind of relax yourself out of this. Do something like a story for children, something to get your mind off of the usual things. And that's how it started. And you can see a lot of Le Petit Prince. There's a lot of little elements of his life that are kind of part of this book. There is some theories that the Rose could be actually a family member. Obviously the pilot in Crashing in the Sands, obviously a reference to the exact same thing years ago.
Yeah, just to interject here for a second, for anyone who has not read The Little Prince before, the main character, the narrator of the book, is a pilot whose plane goes down in the desert by himself, and he's doing emergency repairs on his aircraft when he encounters the Petit Prince, the Little Prince, who is a visitor from outer space who lives on a tiny asteroid and is visiting Earth.
It's very cute, actually, of a story, but lot of depth in it. It's something, I don't know, Peter or Tom, do you guys remember studying this when you were in school?
I actually didn't study. No, I don't think we specifically studied it.
Okay.
So, Cookie, to talk about what you were mentioning, how Saint-Exupéry wrote this while he was in North America as sort of like a more lighthearted children's fare, but it does have a lot of depth to it. the dedication to the
この前
book
入れ
is
た
very
んだよな、
interesting.
魔女。
He dedicates the
いつも
very
この
first page.
人
He
が魔女
dedicates
乗
the
って、
novel
魔
to
女だから。
one of his good
魔
friends
女だ
who
か
was in
ら。
France, and of course, again,
魔
this is
女に
during
乗
World
っ
War
てとは
II.
言
So
わないもんな。
Nazi Germany was occupying France at the time, and so the dedication says, "This is dedicated to my good friend who is currently in France, where it is cold and dark and very dangerous and not a happy place at the moment." But that didn't seem appropriate to dedicate a children's book under those circumstances. So the actual dedication then goes on to say, "I'm dedicating it to my friend when he was a 10-year-old boy."
It does also connect very much with the story and the underlying morals that were built on this book. You know, it's because the whole point of the Petit Prince is, you know, the adults, they don't understand things, right? There's a lot of elements of
Why did you draw? Why would I be
innocence.
afraid of a picture of a hat?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
a very famous part of the book.
The irony of not opening your creativity and living yourself, you know, as a child. Like, you don't need to grow up and be in the serious world all the time. You can be yourself and stay yourself. So there's many of these elements, and it's like it fits perfectly with that. As you said.
Right, yeah, I guess the underlying theme, I mean, and there are many important themes of this book, but probably the central theme is, as you grow older, don't lose sight and don't forget to look at the beauty of the world through childlike wonder. And that's sort of the message that the Petit Prince, the character of the Petit Prince, is trying to impart on the narrator, the downed pilot who is repairing this airplane in the desert.
Yeah, exactly that.
Could you overdo it?
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously you have responsibilities as an adult that you don't have as a child, but it's kind of about finding a balance. Don't be too serious, and don't lose sight of things that you found magical as a child, because they're still magical as an adult, and you just you often overlook that. There's a tendency for a lot of people to overlook that. Born a week ago, I'm flying the Robin Cap 10, which is a French-built two-seat aerobatic training aircraft, and as you can see, we can actually do some pretty fancy maneuvers here. We are certified for full aerobatic flights in the Robin Cap 10.
フライトシミュレーターの鱗割りですね。
Inside Flight Simulator by default.
It is
Also
careful.
standard version. Standard version? Not sure. I believe so, right?
So I did eventually find the copy.
Took you sweet time.
Yeah, and then it just wasn't next to me the whole time.
So Tom, is your edition, is it in English or French?
Dutch.
Aida!
I mean, we got to remember that this was published in English
I know
and
that.
あれ
French.
この前もあの
at
人
first.
だったかな
This was legit. The first version was published in North America, and then it was later published in France. But by then, I believe Saint-Exupéry was not alive anymore.
つけないんだよ
So
な
it's kind of an interesting thing. So technically, English could be considered one of its a proper version as well, like a genuine canon version.
And then I found a book from my girlfriend about the movie that they made, the art behind it.
Oh, that is a beautiful movie. I don't know if factual fell listen to that, but I remember all. I want to say
In
probably about
2051,
8 or 9 years ago, this movie came out, and it uses a combination of
Ah,
computer
この飛行機も飛んでる。
animation, but then also like stop motion animation. It has two very distinct art styles, and it is just, it's absolutely beautiful. And it's not a strict, like, exact adaptation of the book, but it takes the themes and sort of the underlying story of the book and then tells its own kind of spin on it. And it's, there's the old aviator, that's the narrator, voiced by Jeff Bridges in the movie. The dude. And so the story of the
最初とあの
movie is there is a little girl, and she's a school child, and she has an overbearing mother who is putting too much pressure on her to succeed in life and basically robbing her of her childhood. And she lives next door to this old man, the old aviator,
おしゃれさ
who then tells the little girl the story about how decades earlier he crashed in the desert and he encountered the little prince. And so he's relaying that story to this little girl who lives next door to him. Anyways, I think it might be on Netflix, depending on your country. It's probably on some kind of streaming service. If you haven't seen it,
on Netflix. Yeah.
Yeah. If you haven't seen it, I do highly recommend everyone watch that film. It's got
And if you're still
Ricky
hesitating,
Gervais does one of the voices.
yes.
It's got a pretty good cast. Anyways.
Well, even for the music, Hans Zimmer did the music for this. Hans Zimmer?
Just some little.
Doesn't ring a bell.
Composer.
Yeah. He did a couple movies and then. You know,
Really?
Alright.
Never heard of
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
The
Wow.
title is The Little Prince, or in French, Le Petit Prince.
Yeah, 2015.
Yeah. And for me, it's unavailable on Netflix.
And yeah, if you missed earlier, The Little Prince is again not counting religious tech holy books like the Bible or the Quran. The Little Prince is the #2 best-selling book ever written. So in about 80 years, it's set that sales record. The only book to sell more copies is A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens.
Let's see, pretty. Yeah. Kodiak.
Yes.
Sounds as well. I should have picked a plane with an autopilot.
Right.
I mean, there is an autopilot. Well, it's a gyro. Yes. So basically, the big column in the middle of the cockpit is your autopilot, and the wheels are the trim.
That is an impressive autopilot.
It's big.
Looks a bit like Otto.
But yeah, so you have the different switches. You need the top switch from, well, looking from inside center cockpit. So it's more to your right. You gotta bring all those switches to on. So it's not these side switches. But this point is amazing. Like the autopilot, yes, it kind of acts like an altitude hold and heading hold.
Amazon'muş
So
devam.
you kind of play these settings.
I don't know about anyone else. I'm getting a lot of bumps in this thing.
It's like water.
Well, I would say
Very well.
France has been hit a lot by weather recently. It's been very, very warm. So
I saw not of France, but nearby Spain.
Hadi bakalım.
Chart for the entire country, and it looks crazy, the heat wave happening in Spain right now.
I think yesterday or the day before they measured a ground temperature of 64 in some spots.
yeah, you're
Celsius?
cooking. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that is insane.
Literally,
Like
crushing.
that's
that kind
ground,
of
so
temperature will
that's-
actually burn your skin if you touch it.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, now we know the true purpose of la siesta.
I'll
And
just
even
man
in the
and do it.
mountains, it was really warm. Like I have family right now in the Alps, and they had to. Well, obviously, the Alps is perfect for hiking. You know, enjoying the nature. And well, the difficulty with that is it's so warm even up there that they needed to wake up very early. So they woke up at about 4:30, 5, so that they could be down there and essentially have the morning, the cool morning still, to do their trip and come back there early afternoon. That way they could, you know, stay away from the scorching heat. I think it was 38 in the Alps, so you can assume, you know, it's definitely over 40 in other parts like Lyon and the surrounding cities. So
By the way, switch to my point of view for something. You see, I'm flying hands off. Look, I just wanted to demonstrate how much turbulence there is. Look how upset my plane just got, and look how much it's bouncing around. Again, I'm not doing this myself. Hands off here. This is just the turbulence rocking my aircraft at the moment. So it's kind of a struggle to keep her flying straight and level in these conditions.
Even this big one is thrown around pretty badly.
That's an autopilot.
Yeah, I'm hand flying today. I wanted to fly the Robin Cap 10 since it's a French aircraft, but it does not have an autopilot.
In the Netherlands, it was actually pretty calm today. We had a bit of cloud, bit of overcast, not much wind. It was fine. But here it's pretty extreme. Same with the temperatures actually, right? It's fine. Because how are the temperatures in Belgium, Tom? Around 20-ish?
24.
24. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, so here it's only like 18, 19, which is nice.
Lovely.
Maybe 20. Yes.
Well, at least we can't deny climate change now. It's just like France, Spain, it's just boiling, and you guys are still calm. Enjoy it while you can, because
Yes. Well, I mean, they said that 2023 is already record-breaking for worldwide temperatures, right? And 2024 will be even worse.
yeah,
Let's actually turn off autopilot and no flying to the ground. So Peter, you have a friend in chat.
Your number one fan of her.
Yeah. Maybe if we get more.
That's one of those
No, she's purely imaginative.
What's the joke that I'm missing here? I don't know this person in the chat, so.
Oh, neither do I.
Me neither.
Oh yeah, she's a real life friend. She just why are you never able to join us on Friday evening, Prince? Well, I said
Tractable gear.
they do very interesting computer stuff, very impressive. And then she said, no, I'll watch you.
なんか昔
Here
の
we are. Apparently it's not that impressive.
You can have
マイ
him
クロ
on
ソフト
Friday.
フライトシミュレーター2000に入ってたやつじゃないかな。
Let's go to Peter's
2000の
point
デ
of
フォル
view.
トっていうか
Peter, can we get an
Choice
external view of your aircraft? So, I mean, I think it's a pretty impressive looking plane.
あーさっき
that
の
thing is
Not
huge.
sure what you're flying.
スピーディーだ、スピーディー。
Actually, you could walk around the cabin. Like the cabin itself is the size of a room.
Yeah. One of my favorite features of this aircraft, for anyone who
なんか山も何もない。
there's again, this is a plane that dates back to the 1940s, 1950s. So this is an entire navigation
も
room
うな
with
んか
a
田
big
園
map
風
table.
景、森と田
And
園
it
風
has a
景。
world map on the tape in the sim, like the in-sim version of this plane will have a map. And there's a little model of the plane, and the model will move around
Super
the map
Viking.
inside the cabin to show you
Boeing
where you currently are in the world, which I think is
787
such a fun little feature.
その飛行機最近なんか人気なんじゃなかったかな。筆があってなん
I
か
really can't wait for that.
This one?
こういう機会があったかしら。
There's also certain elements of navigation which I'm very interested in learning. I am in no way a good navigator, but they're talking about geometric wheels and radio geometric navigation in the manual for this, saying, see radio geometric navigation in the upcoming updates, if not already available.
Oh.
So there's no module or section in the PDF on the
Joint Strike
the manual
Fighter.
for this yet, so I believe it's still pending, but this looks very exciting to try. Remember, this plane, would fly distances. This thing would go closer to Africa, maybe across the Atlantic.
ダメさしみと
They were really worried about this plane because this plane started
こんな
being
銀
built
ピカ塗装もあるんだ。
before the Second World War, and their installations are just south of Bordeaux, which is just below the Bassin d'Arcachon, and it's on a little city named Biscarrosse. And the issue is obviously the Germans reached the spine, and so they had to dismantle a huge section of the plane and move it elsewhere. And once the war was over, essentially the Germans had this policy of break everything, burn anything that you can, and leave. So they were left with basically only a couple of hangars left. Everything else was completely broken. And they rebuilt everything, and then they rebuilt the plane and continued with this plane for many years. I believe 10 or 12 different models were made, each were unique. And major props to the devs for this one, because the plane is simply magnificent.
Interesting bit of historical trivia to build on what you were talking about there, Cookie. You're talking about the sort of scorched earth policy by the German army. When the Western Allies were on the verge of liberating Paris, Hitler himself gave the order that the occupying German forces should sack Paris and burn it to the ground. And the German general who was in charge of the Parisian garrison, he refused that order. He said Paris is too beautiful of a city to destroy, and so he actually refused to carry out the order to destroy the city.
Thank God for that. But at the same time, you know, Paris was not left unscorched from the war, obviously.
And the first Allied forces to march into Paris to liberate the city.
台風
This was
BF108 BF108 買ったで
Oh, do you not know
買
this
っ
one?
たやつじゃない
The thing is, I've studied all my life in Canada as well.
Okay.
So it's like,
Short answer
is
is
it
no.
English?
No.
Oh, okay, I'll give you a hint.
More of an
There's
educated guess.
aviation connection.
バイエルン航空機製造会社
Tell me.
会社購入祭りで買ったやつですよ
Named for the
BF109 と一
first
緒に
person to
でも
march
早い
the
追い
first
つかない
Allied soldier to march into Paris and liberate the city.
There's an aviation connection. Ooh, you're just making me draw a blank here.
Yeah, Chad has got it. Wayland
Oh,
Utani.
that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, of course.
Charles de Gaulle, who was leader of the French, the
Shame on me,
exiled
guys.
Free French forces, obviously liberating France from fascism was very much a team effort by the Western Allies, the UK, United States, of course my own country, Canada, free Poles, free French, free Norwegians,
あ来た来た近づいてきた
all kinds of people that were fighting against fascism in the 1940s all played a part in liberating France. But
な
to
かなかいい塗装
march
じゃない
on
で
the
すか
capital city
ど
and
こ
to
の国
liberate
になる
Paris
かわかんない
itself,
けど
General de
これはこ
Gaulle
れで
insisted
なん
that
か
it
か
was
っこいい
French
飛行機だな
forces that received the honor to be the first to march into France and liberate the city.
尾翼がなんか
And it was
BF109
de
に
Gaulle
似てますな
himself was actually at the head of that column of French forces that recaptured Paris for the French.
じゃあ空冷なのかな綺麗なのか空冷なのかちょっとよくわかんないけどなるほどなかなかいい飛行機じゃないやありませんか
Actually, we're about to enter the Parc Naturel Régional du Morvan, which is a huge national park in this region, which is, honestly, we're kind of in the middle of nowhere. There's no real city around here. We have Dijon to our right, a very historic city, and
いい飛行機だ
Bourges further up we'll have Orléans, which also
よかっ
has
た
a huge
買
history.
った飛行機が見れてまだ一回も見れてないのが
A
何
really
機かあ
interesting
る
spot
ん
you
だよ
want to
な
be in if you enjoy nature, because this is one of the few spots where you're far away
まあでっかいの
from
もいいね
cities
なかな
and
か
light pollution.
買った
That
甲
you
斐があ
can
る
actually
ね
enjoy
いや大きい
a
飛行
lot
機はいいっすよ 乗りたいとは思わないけど
stars in the sky.
見てると楽
You
しい
can see the whole Milky Way, and there's a lot of astronomical observations done in this natural park.
Pico Demick asked, any good wine regions around here? I'm thirsty. I mean, isn't the entirety of France is a good wine region?
Yes, you can go anywhere, you'll be fine.
Maybe not Normandy.
Right.
Normandy is more known for
Well, we kind of missed it, but had we gone straight north when we left Lyon, you would have passed through many places, Belleville-en-Beaujolais, Mâcon, then you would have gone all the way up north to Dijon, in which case you'll be fine because you'll have all the different wines right there, right? You'll have the Beaujolais, you have basically La Région de Bourgogne, where you have basically the highest number of appellation d'origine contrôlée, which is the controlled wines, the naming. This is the hotspot for the highest numbers of these protections than any other French regions. You basically have all the different types of wines there. It's massive. Beaujolais, Bourgogne, there's everything. And actually, if you want to do, there's a whole road of wines that you can do. And I see it's already set in chat by Captain Torrance right there. And yes, you can go all the way up to Reims and celebrate with champagne. And you better have a designated driver if you do this, but you can follow that road of wines and enjoy a massive amount of a variety in such a little stretch of road. It's really insane. And actually, this is something that used to be very common in France. You know, like the average person would just take a weekend, drive down there, try a couple wines, And back then it was I'm not going to say it wasn't known, but it was very easy to do. You know, you would just meet the people, you know, they would just open up a couple of bottles, try things, and you would come out with a couple of bottles, or usually even more, a couple of cartons full of bottles. And that used to be a very, you know, direct, more intimate relationship with the producer. Now it is much more known and obviously a lot more popular, and so it has become a little more less artistic and a little more, you know, like attraction style. So it is still something to do. It's still great. It's much more organized now, and you can do so, but it's not what it used to be in that very traditional and simple way of doing things. It's still very neat. So if you ever get a chance, just enjoy that. It's so worth it.
Last year in July, I was in Rams for a commercial to shoot a commercial of Moet et Chandon. It was pretty nice. Went down into the cellars.
Very good champagne. I've had that one before.
It was an American crew that did the ground part, and the second shooting day, well, I'd say they had a lot of fun.
I mean, yeah, you could just drive a little south and you got some really good champagnes there. And again, very, very protected. And we're talking, you know, in certain places, if you're 5 meters off, you're not in that territory. You can't be called champagne. You know, it's very restricted and limited. But that's what makes the quality and the status of champagne. It's exactly that.
Well, you've reminded me of something else, Cookie, talking about like French people going on road trips to try food and drink. I think we may have talked about this before in the stream, but maybe not in quite some time. A lot of people, I'm sure, are familiar with the Michelin Guide and how, you know, if you ever watch shows on television or movies about how there are restaurants that get a Michelin star or 2 Michelin stars or the very cream of the cream to get 3 Michelin stars. These are the best restaurants in the entire world. They're evaluated on very, very strict criteria, and they're looking only at the quality of the food, interestingly enough, not the overall dining experience. So obviously you would think, you know, if you're going out to spend hundreds of dollars on a meal, you'd think things like service and ambiance, and if there's live music being played, like a string quartet or something in the restaurant, all those would factor in. But no, the Michelin Guide only rates restaurants solely on the quality of the food. And there's no price requirement either. A lot of people think that to get a Michelin star restaurant, it has to be very expensive. It has to be fine dining, you know, snappy service, white tablecloths, you know, the kind of place where you're uncomfortable to just relax and be yourself. That's actually not true. In fact, there is a hawker stall in Singapore, which I personally eat at. I don't know if Slim Man is in the chat, but Slim Man took me there when I was visiting Singapore. And it's the equivalent of $5 American. You can have a plate of Singapore chicken rice. And this has the record for the lowest cost Michelin star restaurant in the world. But anyways, what is the connection to French road trips and Michelin star restaurants? Anyone know that?
Actually, because it's a higher company.
That's right. A lot of people don't understand, or they don't make the connection. The French tire company, Michelin, like with the Michelin Man, they created the Michelin Guide as a publication. I think it was in the 1920s or maybe the 1930s. They created this publication as a way to encourage people to drive more. So they would put more wear and tear on their tires, and then they would have to buy more tires. And it's something that's persisted. And so it was originally written as a guide for motorists who were driving around France, where every sort of city and town you would go to in France, where were the best places to stop and eat. And then over many decades, it expanded to other countries, not just France anymore. fact, I see a comment from Ecodemic in chat here that says Japan has more restaurants with stars than anywhere else. That is correct. As of a few years ago, Japan has the most Michelin star restaurants of any country in the world.
よかったですね、ライバルの
So yeah,
BF109 が来て。
the whole like Michelin
ゼロ
star,
戦は全然来ないですけどね。
how you get, you know, ratings for restaurants. That all started from a tire company
どうしたらゼロ戦が来るいつになった
that
ら来
wanted
る
a
のよ。
marketing gimmick to encourage people to drive more.
3年ぐら
So
い
they
待
would
っとっ
put
たら
more
来る
wear
の
on
か
their
な。
tires, so they would then have to buy more tires.
I mean, I think that worked.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, CD, you said
Wow.
creme de la creme?
Creme de la creme.
It's creme de la okay, no, man. I believe you said cream.
Or maybe I said cream of the crop. I might have said.
Yeah. No, you said, I thought you said cream.
I would, as someone who is fluent in Francais, I would not say cream of the cream. I would not. I'm pretty sure I would. I mean, we can watch the VOD. Sometimes my brain gets ahead of my mouth, but as a fluent French speaker, I'm pretty sure.
Actually,
say creme de la creme,
I'm
not
reading
cream of
here
the cream.
that it's the Gourmet that only focuses on the food, opposed to the Michelin.
Cooper Vane has another interesting bit of trivia here. Please now explain Guinness and record keeping. Yeah. This is also a fun little bit of trivia. Why is Guinness, the makers of stout beer in Ireland, why are they associated with a book that keeps track of world records? And this is a true story. It's because people would get in arguments in pubs. They would go to an Irish pub, they would order a Guinness, and then they would get in arguments with their friends over who held the record for something. And so to have an authoritative source to solve these arguments and prevent bar fights, Guinness, the beer company, made a publication where they would document world records for everything.
I thought it was just a single notification of hold my beer and watch this.
Well, it worked as well. There's actually this French movie called L'Aquis. And L'Aquis, thank you. And that's a great movie because it literally encapsulates the whole element of French food versus industrial food. It's done through the CEO of a company that writes its own guide, Le Guide du Chemin, which is it's a hilarious comedy. And well, if you know French and you want to enjoy some French culture, this is a truly top-notch movie. It really highlights kind of that mix where, you know, like supermarkets and things became more industrialized, and you know everything became more, you know, you go to the big supermarket, everything's packaged in plastic, and you know it was kind of like this transition era, and it happened same with fast food versus, you know, restaurants. It doesn't have to be fine dining restaurants, it could be, you know, just on the side of the road you got this thing. And, oh my god, it really encapsulates all of this really well, so definitely worth a watch.
Yeah, there's a couple of great movies about, you know, Michelin star restaurants and like the quests and the singular-minded drivenness that some chefs have to achieve either their first Michelin star, which is a very big deal, or if they have a star already to get 2 stars and then ultimately 3 stars.
And maintain those stars.
And then maintain them. Yeah. Of course, very famously, there's the Disney Pixar film Ratatouille that is about French dining culture.
Yes, a movie with Louis de Funès and Coluche, indeed.
Also a true story. I read about this. It was about a year or two. There was a very world-renowned chef. I think might have had 3 stars, 3 Michelin stars. And he actually wrote to the Michelin company and requested that he be removed from the guide. His restaurant be removed from the guide. And he didn't, even though he was, you know, he achieved that pinnacle of success and got the 3 stars that every chef dreams of. He said it was creating unrealistic expectations for his customers, and it was basically destroying his motivation and why he wanted to make good food and delicious meals for his customers and his guests. And it put too much pressure on him and his staff, and so he voluntarily removed himself from the Michelin guide despite having 3 stars. So that was an interesting story too.
I can fully understand it, actually.
well, you do attract a certain crowd
VDB
when you
のや
get
つも
that.
確か買ったやつ
Yeah,
なんだよな。
and you have to
クラフト
perform
の飛行機じゃ
everything
ないか
like
な。
Yeah.
it's so stressful, so high cost. So why just give them reasonably good food in a healthy environment? Be done with it. I can fully feel his sentiments why he would do that.
People in chat are saying you sound like a robot, Peter.
Maybe he is.
Maybe
Yes, AI.
Okay,
Actually, Peter.
what about now? Is it on just
Oh,
Peter?
頭の上にある
Peter,
多分アンテナだと
did you get paid
思うんですけど、
for AI?
Where's my microphone?
昔
Where's
の
my microphone? He's not here.
新幹線光号
It's just Peter. That's great.
it's
に
just
なんか
me.
似てて
Better now or
親
not?
近感が湧きますね。
Restart some stuff.
For us, he sounds fine.
Goblin Zeus
Sounds
says
like a
another
Peter.
movie on French cooking is La Cuisine au Beurre with
Yes.
Bernal and well,
Which,
that
like, all the
actually brings up an
actors.
interesting point. This is a maxim that I'm not a good cook, but for people who are passionate about cooking and preparing delicious meals, I do know this one bit of advice. How can you tell the difference between a professional chef and a good amateur cook? Anyone
I don't
the
know
answer to this
how.
one? Yeah, Hex has got it. More butter. Yeah. A professional chef will use like double or triple the butter of a good amateur cook. May not be the healthiest thing, but it certainly tastes so much better. And yes, we do have a touch and go coming
ち
up.
ゃんと見えてる。
Yeah, and we're just passing a UNESCO monument as well.
Excuse me?
I knew that,
Might
of course.
have missed that. Oh, is it Lima Foxtrot?
あ、でも持ってないと思うんだよな。スーパーバイキングでってる。なんなんだ
Okay.
We'll be fine.
スーパーバイキングなんだろう
So
け
yeah,
ど
that's
けれども
that's my one bit of as someone who is an awful cook. That's my one bit of culinary advice to anyone watching the stream. If you're cooking something, you can never go wrong by adding more butter.
まあまあ多分
Well,
全然
Well, health
い
wise.
けないでしょうな。
There's no such thing as too much butter.
my doctor will be happy.
Hey Hex, no, I'm not flying with generic models. No. I mean, the sim is probably struggling a bit,
Lifetime
but
cooking. It's a nice.
Having said that, if someone has a
I'm actually live as well. Yeah, lifetime. Like,
third-party plane,
well, not lifetime, but like live.
Wow, this turbulence is killer today.
It's better if you
Not
fly
much
upside
time,
down.
but-
I've
is it? Let me try.
I mean, that's what I'm doing the whole time. It's fine.
Well, I saw
Trim the
7.3
dice.
earlier doing that.
Also, real-time. It's nice.
Oh, real time. Okay, let's do that.
Do it.
Do it. Yes. Okay. Yes.
Another
So
stream.
then we go IFR. I found the FR.
おい、ピカピカでかっこいい。じゃあ、なんていう飛行機だろう。
And it's fine.
We should arrive right around sunset.
C195。
Septum gambling again.
C195 って持ってんのかな
It's
お
not
ー、す
pilot
げえ。
safety, Tom. Just think
Well, I'm not doing
Fine.
it safety.
ごめんなさい。フラフラして
What safety?
As you can tell.
I flew a Cessna today for the first time since like 60 days. No,
Hey,
wasn't
Simtom.
pilot.
Simtom, if you get close to the ground, do you get a pull up warning? Because you're upside down.
Oh, down. Push down. Quick question there.
This, that's right.
Peter is, or sorry, Tom is forgetting that the idea is to keep the blue side up and the brown side down on the indicator.
Matter of perspective. Okay.
なんかすごく古いタイプの
Now the trim is all messed up.
ライトが翼についてたような気がするな。
Now here's a question on the subject of French cuisine. Has anyone in chat ever had like a proper soup 11-course French dinner? That you would eat like over a period of 4 hours.
4 hours?
Well, I've had dinners that lasted 4 hours, but they weren't necessarily French cuisine.
I mean, in a restaurant, that would be expensive, but very tasteful, I assume.
Pingo says, no, but I've hosted them in my work. Yeah, so the idea would be like the fancy multi-course French classic French cuisine dinner is that you get like 11 courses or 14 courses or some ridiculous amount, but each individual course is really small. It's only like 3 or 4 bites. And so you get to try a very large variety of many different foods, all expertly prepared. And sometimes, depending on the restaurant, they will do, the sommelier will do a matching wine pairing with each course that's paired to enhance the flavor of the food and the wine. They complement each other. That can be dangerous though, because like you have 11 courses of food, you get 11 glasses of wine.
No, that's the whole point, CD. That's the whole point. Enjoy more wine. Though there is a lot of tradition.
Cookie or chocolate.
Oh, Tom. Oh, we're about to start a fierce war in chat amongst our French citizens.
We're talking about food to begin with, and then
there it goes already in chat.
Say that once again, Tom. What are you talking about here?
Well, do I just say the 2 words again, or?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, Cookie, were you eating a pan au chocolat or chocolatier?
This is the most dangerous answer.
I only have one.
Actually, CD, could you do a poll and figure out? Because there's probably some French in there, and I mean it's something probably people have tasted before. I want to see how these guys answer it. For me though,
if Inquest is watching right now, are you able to create a Twitch poll on whether you would say chocolatine or pain au chocolat? Nicotine 70 says Civil War. Yes, this is not a joke. This is very serious business in Twitter space. So
you'll get destroyed.
フランスの延々と続く単調な田園風景が
they would use a different word for the generic term for a sugary carbonated beverage. For example, like Coca-Cola or 7-Up. Like there's a generic term for that. And depending where you live in the United States, you might say commonly soda, or in different regions you might say pop. And actually in certain regions in the South, the generic term for all carbonated beverages is Coke. So you go to a restaurant in Georgia and they'll say, what would you like to drink? You'll say, I'll have a Coke. They'll say, what kind? So
大脱走っていう映画で飛行機に乗って逃げた人たちがいて、その人たちの乗ってたのがこの世の人の飛行機だったな。これと一緒かどうかはわかんないけど。
And depending on what region of France you live in, they take this debate very, very seriously. And I'm not joking. This is a true story. This is a very, very serious debate amongst French citizens on what the proper term for this pastry is. Is it called pain au chocolat or is it called chocolatine?
I'm gonna go out there and say, for me, it is pain au chocolat. Because I mean, yes, okay, you give it a unique name. But I mean, the recipes are actually not that different from like a croissant. It is this kind of pastry made with a lot of butter and a lot of the different layers that assemble. So it's actually not that far off. But for me, it's still considered, I guess, like a bread with a topping style. So pain au chocolat would work.
Yeah. So for me as a Canadian who does not really have any stake in this debate, I would always say pain au chocolat. Chocolatine sounds weird to me. By the way, this is in my country, of course, there's a very large French-speaking group in Canada, particularly in Quebec, but in other
やっぱ
provinces as
近くに
well.
来ると
They often try to protect the French language
ラン
in
ドマークの
Canada,
旗が
and
消えるようにな
they
っ
will
た
take
のかな
words like English words, originally English words, and they will create a French version of those words, and they would try to get them to catch on. And I don't know if this is spread to France or not, but one of the ones that I think is really dumb,
こう
personal
センフ
opinion, I'm not
ィ
making an authoritative statement here at all. The word email, of course, is a portmanteau of electronic mail. Everyone just says email. But there was no sort of original, because it's technology, right? It was a term that was coined sort of in the it became popularized in the 1990s. It's been around longer than that, but really hit the mainstream in the 1990s. So the authority that the commission that protects the French language in Quebec, they did not like people using the word email because that was an English word. So they figured they needed to have their own French word for this, and so they called it courriel, which is a portmanteau on the word courrier, which is the French word for mail, and then L at the end for electronique.
動画的
Courrier électronique becomes courriel.
動画的も
And
しかして
it did
動
not
画
catch
的
on. As far as I know, anyways, it does not catch on. Everyone
Study.
says email.
You'd be surprised. I mean, okay, so there's multiple, let's say, like different French in Canada, because obviously it's separated from France, so it kind of evolves on its own, right, separately. And courriel is actually quite used in Ontario here, because obviously it's Franco-Ontarien, so there's this French school board as well. There's still a lot of French here, despite not being as much as Quebec, where it's prominently French, and then English comes afterwards. But courriel is fine, in my opinion. There is definitely some words which are like, oh, come on, guys.
あ、これとそうも一緒だね
That's just the evolution of language, and remember,
じゃい
French also embedded itself heavily into English back with Guillaume Le Conquérant and William the Great, and basically, in the late 1200s, early 1300s, we kind of mixed again languages. So for me, it's like whatever works will work, but it's really cool to see those different kind of languages kind of mingle and build over time. Again, it's French and English, they're just building together. They're separate languages, but they're still kind of mixing words between each other. And it's amazing to see that, 800 years later, we're still doing it.
It's amazing.
Here's a little bit of interesting trivia on that subject. There's a divergence in British English and American English, or Commonwealth English, so like Canadian English, Australian English, etc. So in British English, you have the letter U is added to a lot of words, like neighbor and color, things like that. They will have a U, whereas in American English, they do not have that U. So where did that come from? Anyone know the trivia on this one? So what happened? It's actually, believe it or not, despite English as a language originating in England, the original spelling of those words is actually the American way, with no U. But after the United States became an independent country, there was sort of like a fascination with French culture in England, and it was seen as sort of more sophisticated and aristocratic. And so almost as a way to envy or imitate the French, a lot of these English words in British English adopted the French spelling, which had this additional U, and then that spread throughout the Commonwealth, so to Canada, Australia, New Zealand, etc. And so, believe it or not, the American spelling is actually the original English spelling of these words.
Interesting. For me, it's like I would use the U, but Microsoft Word would always push me back, So it's always like, the O. So I've kind of played both, to be honest. And we got the poll that ended with 15 people said pain au chocolat, and two brave souls said chocolatine. Respectively.
I think they misclicked.
Yeah, they probably misclicked. I've never seen that used in real life. Not that I have.
Well, I have.
But then I go to the official flight sim Discord and I see we have a booster that's called
probably mistyped us as well.
We should get the user warning.
Yes. Final one final one.
Yes.
Oh, by the way, everyone, welcome to the Discord admin meeting.
We've had a couple in the past, but yes.
Yeah, but this is the first public one.
Not that we're gonna
A lot live on
discuss
Twitch.
anything, but
All right, I should be coming up really close to the first touch and go here under the field and sight.
ラストタッチンゴー、タッチンゴ
Cedar
ー、
Tom,
タ
FS24.
ッチンゴーするでいい。
Want to talk
I think
about
it releases in 24.
It's really not though.
Wow,
Say.
I heard it's great.
I heard it.
どこにタッチンゴーじゃい。
These which were nice, but
And actually, one of the forum moderators has, made a whole transcript of the FS Expo keynote.
oh wow,
Jorgen said.
Wow.
Let's see if I can.
That's impressive.
It
Okay,
is.
I'm coming up to the touch and go.
Oh,
Having
wow,
no
yes, we
wheels.
are.
This could be interesting for Peter.
We are.
yeah.
You might just want to do a low flyby over the
I'll just
runway.
do I'll just do a low pass. Yeah.
10
I'll
回
slow
先
down a
の
bit.
ブランシュ、ブランシュ、ブランシュ、ブランシュ。なんかフランス語っぽい響きじゃね。シルブプ
By the
レ
way,
イ。
if I see there's some questions in chats about development stuff. So this is a community fly-in stream. We don't really get into development details during this show. However, we are making an exception next
マ
week.
ドモアゼル。
A lot of our team, it's the summer months in both France and the United States and Canada where most of the development team is based. So a lot of people are enjoying some time with family, taking some vacation, which is very common to do in the summer. And so we don't have a developer Q&A session, developer live stream in July. But we don't want to leave you in the dark for too long. So instead, we've got some members of the dev team that have been very generous with their time and have been working with Jane to record some live video, or pre-recorded video, I should say. And we're going to share that same time, same place next week during this stream, during our fly-in Friday next week. We've got probably about a 30 minutes approximate pre-recorded video with some members of the dev team. We'll be addressing some common questions we've seen from the community.
I think that counts as a touch and go, right? I did a touch. I guess.
Yeah, and you're going.
Grape and touch.
How's the match should go? Love it.
Yes, mission.
And you got a lot of space underneath.
Right.
By the way, Peter, question for you. Since that cockpit is very, very large, and there's definitely,
飛んどる飛んどる。
let's say, 3 to 5 people working at one time, and you
Yeah.
need a crew relief system.
Yeah.
Where do you think are the bunks for the pilots?
In the wing. Well, yes. I don't know. Where?
You're
建物の
looking at
形
the
はや
door
っぱ
right
り日本
now.
とは全然違いますな。よくできてんな、そういう意味では。
It's literally in front of the cockpit. So it's that little door, which is,
Yeah,
I
this
don't know why they decided there. It doesn't seem very smart. Because you got the autopilot,
There we
huge
go.
thing, and then yes, you got that thing right there, which you can open, but really need to move the cam more there. It's kind of hard, probably. Oh, bingo! And you got 2 beds in there, right in front.
All right, I've got the field in sight. I'm just getting lined up for a long straight-in final. Tom or Cookie, are either of you closer than I am to the airport?
We are already way past you.
Oh, you already
Yes.
passed it. So you should
Yes.
let me know. I would have switched to your screen for the land.
You were on my screen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We're 21 nautical, or at least I am 21 nauticals after the airport.
Oh wow, you're
So
way
slow
ahead of me
down.
then.
Yeah.
Yes. Slow
Joanne.
down to about 120 knots.
変な名前。
Are you? Oh yes, you're right there.
Joanne.
Santa.
All right, there. I've got the field in sight. So I'm just getting lined up for a very long final now.
I'll just fly it like I still. Rental power.
By the way, I give no guarantees of the quality of my upcoming landing. I'm
Jingo.
terrible, absolutely
Ah,
awful
Kuda.
at landing tail draggers. And there's some pretty significant turbulence today too.
Yes, yes. St. Tom's was beautiful. I'm happy you didn't show mine. And good luck.
I'm just going to temporarily turn player nameplates off so I can see the runway a little bit better.
Okay, I'm gonna go like 1,000 feet.
Ooh, look how much my plane is rocking there. I
で
don't know if
スピー
that's
ド
coming across in the stream, but I'm really having to fight to
今なんかすげ
stay
え
straight.
風
Ooh,
強かったよ
nose
な
just dipped down there too.
Just come to tell you good luck.
This
We're all
turbulence
counting on
is
you.
real.
Counting on you.
We're all counting on you.
I just want to tell you good luck.
We're all counting. I'll slow down a bit, Cookie.
Yep.
What are you cruising at?
Well, about 12, 1300. Trying to slow down to about 120. Apologies to the airliners, probably full flaps right now, trying to just stay at 140.
Well.
So I just looked at my airspeed indicator and it was like 250, and I was like, oh my god, I'm going so fast. Then I realized that on this plane it's in kilometers an hour and not knots. And I was like, okay, that makes a lot more sense. I thought I was coming in way too fast.
Same for your plane.
Alright, here we go.
Jetty, wind shear, wind shear.
Oh my god, there again. I'm terrible at landing tail draggers.
大事故じゃ
But you know, we're on the ground.
大惨事じゃうわーぶつかるぶつかるぶつ
It's
かる
always difficult to know when you have to press the button.
大惨事じゃいなぜ一旦止まったかというと今日は陸地で燃料補給
Rotate. Positive rates.
左右のタンクがもうだいぶ長くなってきたからね
Put the player nameplates back on now. All right, we're going to turn northwesterly heading now and head towards Paris.
Light City.
Yes.
大勢に入
Actually,
るかよ
funny thing about Light City, and I can't really confirm that because I didn't get much time to actually dig into this claim, but I've seen a claim that this was not because the city had a lot of illumination, but also because of the people that were there, most notably inventors, scientists, politicians, and such.
Yeah, Paris has long been associated with being a city of important cultural
この飛行
developments,
機が陸上の滑走
both
路
in
に走
fields
れ
of
る
the
のが
arts, but also in
未だ
fields
に
of
謎
science and engineering. Of course, many famous scientists have been French. Marie Curie,
そろそろここら辺から滑走路
first
に入って
first scientist to win a Nobel Prize in 2 different fields. It's of course very famously French. Gustave Eiffel, famous architect and engineer, designed arguably the most famous building in the entire world.
大丈夫なのかあ、コンコルドおるやん
Yes.
やっぱ一つのグループにとらわれていると飛行機を見逃すな
It's hitting hard. Yeah.
He actually also built the metal framework of the Statue of Liberty.
どういうグループ
Oh,
か
I didn't know
全
that.
然わからないんや
I knew it was a gift from France to the United States, but I didn't know that Gustave Eiffel was involved in that.
Yeah.
Right
Brought to
for
you
other
by Wikipedia.
The lady to meet them all.
What else did he build? There's some other.
Oh, he
big
did a lot of
stuff,
things.
actually.
電源
Yeah.
Oof. Okay, I'm not gonna start.
I can tell you about a very fun one. Many bagpipes were actually developed in France, contrary to popular belief. And there's like a bunch and a bunch of them that they've done. Probably one of the most probably known one, I guess, is the Musette Bressane, which is a type of like native bagpipe from Bresse in eastern France.
バグパイ
But there's just
プ楽器ですか
like called the Muse du Centre. Basically, every region had its own bagpipe, which is really not something you think of when you say France, but it is part of culture.
Captain Connor says, fun fact, did you know it's illegal to make a nighttime picture of the Eiffel Tower and sell that image or use it in any commercial way? I did not know that. That's very interesting trivia, though.
Same here in Belgium. The Atomium. It's a protected monument.
Papa
Like, there
Fume
was
and Black
some,
Pete.
Oh, yes.
It's a
It's
scene
not
that's
give
possible.
people ideas. I know we're going to get to Paris. When we get to Paris, we're going to want to talk about so many things, because Paris is very dense in terms of heritage. But there's definitely one thing that I want to talk about, which is really cool. It's more of a fun fact, but I really enjoy it as such. And that's the secret apartment at the top of the Eiffel Tower, which is not something many people knew when the tower got built. Eventually now it's known, obviously. But this was a really neat thing that existed, that was made by Eiffel himself on purpose. I was like, I'm going to build my little apartment at the top, which is above the last balcony, the last visitation observation balcony, which is all the way at the top. And it was kind of a private area where Eiffel would have guests. He was offered huge sums of money to rent or to, allow people to visit or enjoy the space. And interestingly enough, he never really wanted this. Many believe it was because he already had the money and he didn't need anything more. Others believe it was his more humble upbringing, wasn't necessarily of the high society when he was younger, and so many people speculate on this, but he invited scientists mostly and certain important personalities, and it really remained this element of kind of unique exclusivity right there. And it's always been, the top of the Eiffel Tower, there's a restaurant up there, and that little apartment, which today is actually preserved as well. It's really interesting. I have a couple pictures, but it's probably going to be hard to show. But essentially, you had this huge kind of pole going right through the middle, as well as a whole section of the tower within the room. So very small, but it had a huge kind of balcony, outdoor terrace all around it. So it was super unique, and it was private, so he really had full access to it. And today, it has actually been restored. And visitors to the observation deck can see inside, obviously through a glass divider with a wax mannequin of Eiffel, including some of the notable people like Edison, and as well as a couple of other people, and Eiffel's daughter as well. So, kind of a unique spot. A lot of scientists got to visit this spot. Some great people also, the French Exposition Universelle, which obviously meant this space must have seen a lot of great scientists from the early 1900s.
At the time of its construction, the Eiffel Tower was the tallest building in the world. It's now, I don't even think it's in the top 50 anymore, but certainly when it was built, it was very groundbreaking, pioneering, influential. The previous record holder before the Eiffel Tower was the Great Pyramid of Giza. So kind of we went like...
They had a long record too then.
Yeah, almost 5,000 years that structure held the record, and then it was overtaken by the Eiffel Tower about 100 years ago. When it was originally built, the Eiffel Tower is, the single most iconic building in all of France, probably the most famous building in the entire world. When it was built, Parisians hated it. They thought it was an ugly eyesore, and there were petitions that from notable French intellectuals, artists, people of important stature in French culture were leading petitions to have the Eiffel Tower banned and dismantled because they thought it ruined the beautiful picturesque skyline of Paris. And now it's the most iconic building, probably in the entire world, and certainly the most iconic building in France.
I get it. It's a big piece of metal, and back then it wasn't something people were very fond of. It's understandable, but then they fell in line. They understood what it was. Yes, I'm a little behind you on this. Can you try to pronounce this, or is the...
I don't even have the naming next to me.
Well, I can tell you what this is. Cookie, you probably know what this is.
Yes, of course I do.
Yes. If you're from Kentucky in the United States, you would pronounce this very differently than if you're from France.
I don't know about that, actually.
There's a town in Kentucky that shares a name with this location.
Oh, interesting.
But they pronounce it very differently.
How about we try with that pronunciation first, and then we'll go with the proper one. I'm so curious, sorry. I want to know.
So in Kentucky, there is a town called Versailles.
Oh no.
And that is the correct regional pronunciation. And if you go to Kentucky and if you were to visit that town, actually I'm not sure. I might be getting the wrong landmark.
Yes, because right now we're at the Chateau de
this is something different. This is a different chateau. My mistake. Yeah.
Used to be about 40 kilometers off of Paris. Still is, but Paris is expanding. So is it still?
I saw opulent gardens and beautiful grounds.
Yes.
So I assumed it was the other place we're going to be passing over that looks quite like this, but no, this is a different one.
Fair assumption, though.
Yeah.
There's a lot of beautiful castles in France, specifically Chateau de la Loire. But this is the, how would you say it? It's the little residence outside of Paris. You know, the little relaxing place where kings would go to kind of escape Paris, their duties. You know, this was considered the today's hunting cabin, which I don't know if it would really be considered a cabin, but regardless, beautiful and huge. This whole area used to be actually bigger than Paris itself. Once upon a time. Now it is not, but it's still wonderful. It is one of those places where a lot of kings has visited. A lot of architecture was built here, and just a lot of innovation as well. Just in general, this is probably one of the places where a lot of kings spent their summers and kind of moments of rest around here. Not far from Paris, and obviously very comfortable. If you ever get a chance though to visit, this is one of the spots maybe less visited compared to like Versailles or other places, and still you're getting a lot for your day, so worth a shot.
So on this mission of Versailles, we will be heading there as well. So yeah, as I was kind of alluding to, there is a town in the United States, in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. There is a town called Versailles, which is named after the location in France, Versailles. But if you go to that town in Kentucky and you say Versailles, the local people will look at you like you're from the moon. They would not pronounce it that way at all.
Let's be honest, North America is filled with names from Europe and around the world. I could do a tour of Europe within 100 kilometers of my house. And I'm talking, capital cities of Europe, which is really cool. I mean, it's not the same as the actual one, but it also shows this heritage of immigration in North America.
So here's Tom, by the way, is giving us a drone tour of Versailles right now.
Are you already there, Tom? Or is that the next waypoint?
I'm not sure if this
is... That could be the Chateau de...
Because I don't...
There's so many opulent, beautiful towns.
Yes. I think that the afterport... This is most likely the Chateau, which is another... also not far from Paris, which is very neat. But this one had less visits from the kings and had more. It was more of the people of the higher standings that were also part of this. And I guess this was kind of a spot where they could also build upon their skills in art and different designs. Obviously, very important thing to always stay up to the next trend. Back then. But also things to remember is these places were extremely important because they also held a very important economic aspect. Not only did they host, huge parties, sometimes very lavish, but they also held a lot of magnificent events, meeting a lot of creators, philosophers, inventors. But it also had this other element of maintenance, right? You needed a lot of people. And it was said to have, this castle, the Chateau de Vaux-le-Vicomte, was said to have employed 18,000 workers It cost as much as 16 billion. This time it was the livres. But it's just very expensive, and it took a lot of people to build these things. So it was very important economically, and then obviously maintaining it and building upon it, because these things never stayed in one age. They always kept evolving. You could see those different elements when you go visit them.
I'm just marveling at how beautiful
月はなんとかな夜の女王
are
っていう
sort of to the upper right side.
無慈悲な月
Yeah,
は無
major
慈
props
悲
to
な夜
Solo
の
this
女王
or Gaia.
読んでない
That is beautiful. And obviously, like, these were the places where you would want to be if you were any kind of interest for fine feast, literature, arts. You had Jean de La Fontaine, obviously. You also had Molière. These were artists that were very close. And this was not, the king castle, though they did obviously have them. But it was more for the superintendents of finance, for example, for Louis XIV, and a lot of, higher level people as well. So this was really a place where they could really build and socialize and highlight what people were doing. And I guess this was kind of before we had universal expositions highlighting, the majors of wonders to the entire world, where you had millions of people going to the city to see the latest in innovation and developments and so forth. This was probably what would exist closer in the 1700s or 1800s. This was really the way to be up to date.
And it seems like we have a touch and go.
Yes, Orly.
Yeah, one of the major Paris airports.
Which is
And then the waypoints go
less
wild
passenger.
after that.
Well, it is passenger, but less international, I would say.
I believe this is correct. Cookie, correct me if I've got this wrong. Orly was sort of the first of Paris's three big airports. Is that right? Historically?
I believe so.
And I think Le Bourget was second, and de Gaulle was third.
What I can confirm is that Orly is definitely one that is unfortunately kind of relegated to the sides, and I believe yes, it's also kind of stuck now with its very limited spots. Everything's built around it, so it cannot expand. So yes, everything was left now to Charles de Gaulle, which is far more recent and also further out of Paris for that express purpose. So scaling up the airport, which was a major thing. Remember, aviation is just over 100 years, really.
Look what's starting to appear in the distance.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
これ買ったけどあんまり乗ってない。
What's that tall steel structure called?
No idea.
I think it's an antenna.
早いな。
I think.
Alright.
Which actually one of the waypoints that we went over in the beginning.
上昇してきたから。
We passed through Lyon, and I know we're already in Paris. We're talking about Lyon, but there actually was a little tower, the Tour Métallique de Fourvière, which is one of the points that we had on the flight plan, which actually kind of looks like the third level of the Eiffel Tower, despite not actually being entirely designed upon that. And that was a tower used for sightseeing for Lyon, but it actually ended up becoming a TV and radio antenna tower starting in the 50s. So we're keeping the good one for sightseeing, and we're now to be fair though, it was inaugurated for the World Fair of 1894, 2 years after its intended date, but that's because it was too close to the Paris Universal Exposition of 1889, so I was like, well, they're clashing, and both were amazing, and 1889 is when,
あれ
you know,
車輪出してるまだタッ
the
チング
Eiffel
する
Tower
のどっかに
finished. So I was like, well, they were pretty much competing against each other, and well, Paris won, I guess, on that side. And now it's like it's closed, you can't even go up there, and it's basically full of 3G, 4G, 5G, TV, radio, antennas. It's not really great, but still has that same style because it was built in the same materials, and it looks like the third level of the Eiffel Tower. So it's kind of cool.
On that subject as well, in Japan, there's the Tokyo Tower, which is an exact replica of the Eiffel Tower. The only difference is its
こ
color.
の人こうちょっと
To
信号す
prevent
る
it from
燃料が
collisions
な
with
い
air
のかな
traffic, the Tokyo Tower is painted in alternating bands of white and international orange. So it's high visibility for safety because of the airspace over Tokyo. Otherwise, it's an exact replica of the Eiffel Tower.
Same time, I'm sweating. That turn. Woo.
It's fine.
Fine.
Learn it from the best.
Yes.
Thank you.
AKA
燃
Peter.
料も
Good to have an insurance, right?
Well, now a bunch of waypoints are coming our way.
Yes, it's gonna get busy.
It'll be busy.
Yeah, we
But I
gotta,
mean-
I mean, there's a lot we could see in Paris. I picked out, I think, 4 or 5 highlights. Obviously, the Eiffel Tower is one, the Arc de Triomphe. Because it is Bastille Day, it's no longer there, but the former site of the Bastille, which is now, there's a monument, a column, like a pillar, is there, and sort of like a traffic circle, and you can visit that as well. So we'll
Something
fly over
very
that.
fun you can do is just get old maps from the late 1800s or the early 1900s of Paris. There's many that were made obviously for the Universal Exposition of 1889, but there's a bunch of them that are really neat. You really get to see the old things, and then when they just kind of demolished them to make more space for other things. Well, they kept the memorial, but if you ever get time,
Also,
look at that.
I know I said this the last time we flew to Paris on the stream a few months ago, but my Parisian hot take is I prefer Sacré-Cœur to Notre Dame in terms of beautiful Parisian cathedrals. That's my hot take. Is I think Sacré-Cœur is the better cathedral.
But also the view from there is nice.
Did you
Over
get to
Paris.
see La Sainte-Chapelle, which is right next, very close to Notre Dame?
I did not actually.
It's
POI ですね
we know obviously Paris is just
Point
full
of
of different
interest.
cathedrals and chapels, but this one is beautiful, and its purpose obviously was very similar to the cathedral, but in a much smaller form. It has basically 2 levels, and that thing is worth it. I know obviously
Oh, no,
Notre
no,
Dame,
no,
Sacré-Cœur, and the other ones will
no,
take
no.
it, but if you're going there, you
字が一緒に
gotta
出た
take
けど
3 days in
何かわ
Paris
か
to
ん
view
な
all
かっ
these things, because like none can really be above the other. You just gotta see them all. It's so worth it.
So when I was in France, I spent most of my time sort of in the northwest of France, in Normandy and Brittany. I went to Mont Saint-Michel and some other famous places there. Of course, you have to spend some time in Paris, though. So I was able to cram a lot, but not necessarily everything in. So I went to the Eiffel Tower, went up to the top, went to the Champs-Élysées, went to the Arc de Triomphe, went to the Musée d'Orsay, which, if anyone's not familiar with that, it's a famous art museum in Paris
出ろ名
that
前
has a special focus on like French Impressionist painters, most famously Claude Monet. So a lot of his original works, like the famous
名
water
前がわ
lilies
かんね
that he did, are housed there. And I went to
フランス語っぽ
Sacré-Cœur.
かったから見えてもわ
So
から
I
ん
crammed a lot in, but I didn't do every single touristy thing that one might do in Paris.
It's a
And of
lot
course,
at
for
once
me
as well.
personally, the best part was just eating beautiful, delicious French foods. I went to various different patisseries and
Well.
very many delicious French pastries.
If you're in the area again, look for Bertillon, which is really good with ice creams. So if you're in Paris right now or you'll be visiting, Bertillon is one of the places you need to stop by.
Well, see. Now it's time for Versailles.
Oh, okay. Let's switch over to some time.
Oh. We just had the cookies touchdown.
PC21 ピラタスよいしょ
I have a huge runway anyways. in front of me.
スイスの飛行機で
All
す
right,
ね
so the Palace of Versailles, and I think I'm getting my French history right here. Cookie, feel free to jump in if I'm getting any of this incorrect. Versailles was built by Louis XIV. Is that right?
I believe so. Versailles is
And,
huge,
yeah, of course,
so it
very-
always built upon itself, right?
Right, and it was at the time the most beautiful, opulent, extravagant palace in all of Europe. And famously, a few generations later, during the reign of King Louis XVI and his wife Marie Antoinette, the French Revolution occurred, largely because the country was going bankrupt because the aristocrats and the royalty were pouring all the money into building this beautiful mansion for themselves. Well, the common, everyday French people on the streets of Paris were literally starving to death. And this is where you get Marie Antoinette's famous phrase, which has been mistranslated. Commonly in English, you might hear it say, well, the people are starving, what should the people eat? And in English, Marie Antoinette famously responded, let them eat cake. What she really said...
actually wrong.
what she actually said was, let them eat brioche. Brioche, if you're not aware, is a French type of bread, a very heavy, sweetened, I think it's made with a lot of like sugar, kind of like a dessert bread. So you can see why they would be mistranslated into cake.
It's basically the same thing, right?
Oh, come on. No. It's not cake.
Every
but I mean,
person in the chat just cringed at Peter.
yeah. I mean, the whole reason why this saying is famous because she was so detached from reality, she didn't even realize how poor the people were.
Right. So like the everyday people on the street could not even, even in good times, could not even afford to eat brioche. That was a
right.
That
so translated to modern times, it's basically it translates a lot better if you say let them eat cake, because cake now is the same thing. It's really sweet. It's pretty expensive. No one would ever think of it. It's just because you're bored. So I kind of get it why they say cake. Yes, I know it's not the same. It's very sweet. Yeah, it's the same concept.
You got to remember also the historical context, right? There's been many plagues before, but also there's been some economic downturn. Specifically, like there was this whole thing with mines in Brazil, and there was a whole kind of collapse of certain sectors. And then France was actually kind of the biggest country in terms of population at that time in Europe, and that caused kind of an issue when you suddenly don't have anything to eat anymore. So it was like you couldn't get better than this in terms of lack of balance. It was really disastrous. So the tipping point was really high.
The common people rose up and had a revolution against the royalty and aristocracy.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, it's done the same. Not being royal.
Now here's something I wish had caught on. There was a failed experiment during the French Revolution. A lot of things, the French Revolution was very influential and throughout all of world history, at least Western history anyways. And a lot of things that came out of the French Revolution have persisted to this day. Notably, the persistence of the metric system. This was considered a more enlightened, more logical, more reasoned way of units for weights and measures. But during the revolution in France, the leaders of the revolution also proposed that people switch to metric time. And this never caught on. People just could not adjust to it. That was a bridge too far. They could not adjust to metric time. But I think the concept of metric time is fascinating to me. So instead of having a 24-hour day, and each hour is 60 minutes, and each minute is 60 seconds, you would have a 20-hour day, 10 hours of AM, 10 hours of PM. Of course, the day itself is the same, like, raw length of time. You can't change the speed that the Earth rotates. But the way we measure
calendars
it
would stay the same.
Right, the way we measure it is differently. So instead of having a 24-hour day, we would have a 20-hour day divided into 10 hours of AM, 10 hours of PM. Each hour is 100 minutes, and each minute is 100 seconds. And that's so much more logical and easier to work with, and I wish that had caught on, but people just could not accept that. They could not make
because
that
it just follows the metric logic.
Yep. And so for several years, the French authorities and leaders of the revolution tried to adopt that as the standard for French timekeeping.
Even calendars. There's been many times where they've tried to switch the calendars themselves with the months and everything, and that failed miserably many times as well. It just caused too much confusion. In the end, what people were using is what sticked. So. Yeah.
Swatch also tried something with internet time, with beats, right? It's universal link worldwide. It was a time zoneless internet time thingy, but it also never got on. Seeing by the look of your face, you shouldn't even know it.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Oh, we're like
obviously didn't catch on. Swatch beats, I believe it was called.
But then the Linux method of counting kind of took over, didn't it?
楽しんどる。
Well,
the
there's-
amount of nanoseconds after the Linux epoch.
Yeah.
First
Well, that's the
97.
Unix thing. This is anyone doesn't know. This is the next big crisis in computer science.
Yes.
The- what the-
32-bit overflow.
The 2035 or 2038 problem, something like that. I remember studying this in computer
24,
science.
I believe.
So people probably remember the Y2K problem, where in COBOL a lot of dates were stored as a 2-digit number. Yeah, it's Y2K all over again.
Yeah,
So in the operating
2038,
system
yeah.
Unix, time is not measured as a date. Time is measured as the numbers that have, or the number of seconds that have elapsed since what's known as the epoch time. And the Unix epoch time is midnight, January 1st, 1970. Yeah, here we go. Peter's linked in the chat there, the year 2038 problem. And so what's going to happen in the year 2038, the number of bits that are used to store that number of seconds, 32 bits, we can no longer count high enough with that amount of data. It will have exceeded the maximum number of seconds that can be counted since midnight 1970. And yeah, it is like the Y2K problem all over again, but probably actually even more significant. And computer scientists have been aware of this for like 2 decades now and know that it's coming. And as far as I know, there's still not a great solution for it.
The solution is to move everything to 64-bit, but every current system in existence which is currently running and won't be upgraded by the time will probably crash.
Yeah, it's not going to be great. I mean, 32-bit is getting old, but when you're looking at some old infrastructure, and actually that's a lot of places around the world, you're still seeing very, very old stuff. 80s, 90s, like computers.
Don't underestimate how much stuff is running on Linux, right? Practically the whole internet.
Whoa, JJ's movie hole. I'm going to correct you hard here as someone who has a university degree in computer science.
Yes. Everything happens.
Okay. Everyone erroneously says, oh, Y2K was no big deal, nothing happened, everyone was panicking over nothing. No, absolutely not. The reason Y2K was no big deal is because computer scientists and electrical engineers and IT professionals spent literally hundreds of billions of US dollars and untold number of person hours of labor anticipating and fixing this problem and resolving it so it didn't become an issue. If they had done nothing, it would have been catastrophic. So yeah, sorry, as someone who is a legitimately trained computer scientist, I see this all the time, and it drives me crazy because Y2K would have been a catastrophe, but people took the concerns of the experts seriously and listened to them and invested the time and money and effort to prevent the catastrophe from happening. So yeah, that's my soapbox rant for the day.
But the 2038 bug will probably be even bigger because a lot of stuff is running on Linux.
I mean, everything from healthcare to backbone of the internet to basically
Android phones. Anyone who has an Android phone,
90% of
running on
firmware,
an adapted version of Linux.
90% of random firmware
Yeah.
in your router, in your God name it, in your printer, in your stuff. It's based on Linux.
Actually, even more than that, anyone who has an iOS device or a Mac OS device, those run on Linux underneath the hood.
Yeah.
Yeah, so think of all the billions of devices out there.
And I mean, a lot of them will be updated by that time, but a lot of them.
let's just start
more than
fresh,
won't.
right?
Yeah, and they'll just recycle to January 1st, 97.
So .com boom number 2. I call it a boom, not a bubble, because it's literally going to be that.
you can only, I mean, pumps, for example, for your water supply. They do have controllers. Those controllers are firmware based. Firmware probably based on Linux. There you go. And maybe nothing will happen. Maybe everything will happen.
I see Sim Tom is giving us a tour here of another very famous Parisian landmark. What are we looking at here, Tom? Yeah. Probably the most famous art museum in the world.
It has a painting.
Just
Painting with a small smile of someone.
It actually is legitimately a small painting. In fact, that's probably the #1 comment from tourists who go to see it is they're disappointed by how small and insignificant Mona Lisa is when you see it for real.
Yeah. There's actually a construction crane at Notre Dame.
Yes. Well, there has been pledges of rebuilding Notre Dame in time for the Olympics. I'm not sure if that's going to work though. They've been getting to it, yes.
Wasn't the original plan to have it finished
how
in 2
they
years?
should rebuild it, and should we keep it or should we evolve it? Should we use what we like the original plans? Because like these monuments are so huge, they take hundreds of years to build, or in some cases they're still being built. So it's like there's this whole dilemma, and it's very unique for that exact reason. Yes.
Time
Quite proud of it.
This is incredible, right? Look at all those lights in the sunset and the weather.
City of Lights.
Yes, it's-
Now,
Yeah,
Tom, you're
have
just
another.
using the default scenery plus World Update 4. You don't have any payware Paris scenery, correct?
I do not.
yeah, you kind of cut out their CD.
No, we didn't.
Check. Can you hear me, Cookie?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. Yeah, I hear you now.
This is all default with the World Updates.
It's probably photogrammetry taking my bandwidth. Yes, it's true. We're gonna go Sacré-Cœur, Stade de France, and then the Bourget.
Now, I am, of course, probably going to fail spectacularly. Oh, there's Sacré-Cœur, my favorite Parisian cathedral. I need to get a little bit closer still, but I am going to do a low pass down the Champs-Élysées and attempt, most likely unsuccessfly, and I'll fail miserably and embarrass myself on the stream, but I'm going to attempt to fly underneath the Arc de Triomphe. But every year on
Which
Bastille
is
Day,
actually huge.
この辺
on
が
the Fête Nationale, the
パリの
Champs-Élysées
中
is
心街
host
で
of
は
the
ないで
world's
しょうか。
largest military
わかんない
parade,
けど、どこ
and
に向かってい
there's
る
also a flyover along the length of the Champs-Élysées by the Patrouille de France, which is the French Air Force's precision aerobatic team.
いや、エッフェル塔ではない
You
で
guys
しょう
probably
か。
know this, but one time actually someone flew under the Eiffel Tower. It was an American pilot.
Well, in the victory parade
was-
following the end of World War I, I think it was a French pilot was part of the parade and was instructed to fly down the length of the Champs-Élysées, and the French pilot
花の
disobeyed
都
orders
パリじゃ
and flew underneath the Arc de Triomphe.
Worth it.
Yep.
This
Here,
thing
there's
is
even
really
video
big
of
when
it.
you get close
Yeah,
to
I
it.
remember it. There's a video from the cockpit of the guy flying under it.
建物の並びもなかなか不思議な。
By the way, minor spoiler alerts for anyone who has not yet seen John Wick Chapter 4. There's a pretty memorable scene that takes place here around the Arc de Triomphe.
It was in the summer of 1988 that the mysterious flyer
この
flew
辺
under
で
the
フォータイの方ですか？あ
And they never caught him?
あ、対して。
Is my mic still weird, by the way?
You sound fine to me.
何を見てる
Okay, speaking of flying underneath the Eiffel Tower, I have it in sight. I'm gonna make an attempt here, and then I will also try to fly underneath the Arc de Triomphe.
なんじゃろこれは。完成と
Still weird.
CD going all in.
So there's the Eiffel Tower to my 9 o'clock. I'm gonna make a 270-degree, and there's the Louvre to my 12 o'clock in front of me, and then to my 11 o'clock, that plaza you see with the sort of monument, that's the Place de la Concorde. That's a very fast.
ベルサイユ宮殿を見に来てたんだみんな。ベルサイユのバラバラ殺人事件だ。
Best.
Yeah,
すん
I
げえ
hear
で
you
かい
fine.
んだよな、ベルサイユ宮
And
殿って。
during the revolution, it was also the site of many public executions.
今は何なんだろうね。王様いないですよね。
Both King Louis XVI and Marie
フランス
Antoinette were both guillotined at the Place de la Concorde.
ギロチンのつゆに消えてしまったので。
Interesting enough, we think of the guillotine as a very gruesome method of execution, but once again, in the context of the French Revolution,
ベルサイユ
and
のバラ。
they consider themselves a very
ベ
enlightened,
ルサイユ
civilized,
宮
cultured
殿。
people at the time, and the guillotine was designed to be the most quote-unquote humane and painless way to execute someone. So they thought, if you have to execute someone at all, this is the best way to do it. Was
建
the
物
thinking
が
at the
立
time.
派になってないか、今。
Whether you agree with that line of thought or not, I will leave as an exercise to the reader. However, until France abolished the death penalty in, I believe, the 1970s, the guillotine was still the method that France used for executing prisoners.
There was actually a scientist that managed to bribe the executioner and the whole committee around the execution, and they managed to get him to essentially analyze the whole procedure and how it would be on for the person being executed. And it kind of turns out that you're kind of conscious, semi-conscious for another 10, sometimes 20 seconds. Many of those could be considered, nerval twitch, where it's basically, like it's doing things on its own, but most of the brain is not active anymore. There's always this little period after. It's kind of grim, but it's also, the only ways to do that kind of scientific measurements.
What is less grim is CD doing flying there.
Yeah, well, I'm about to make a very steep turn here and fly down the Champs-Élysées. Also, very famously, the Champs-Élysées is the final stage of the Tour de France, the
final
most
stage.
famous cycling race. And so traditionally, every year, those competing for the title of the world's best cyclists will race down this stretch of road in Paris in front of hundreds of thousands of spectators who line the streets of the Champs-Élysées. All right, here we go. This is gonna, get your F's in chat ready. This is going to end in disaster. I do have photorealism on here, so we're gonna see a very bad failure here in a second.
We're watching.
Volcanic.
I just want to say good luck, Carl, counting on you. I'm on a short final actually. You do your thingy first.
Watch that photogrammetry.
It's fine.
We'll believe he did it, but I didn't see it yet.
Oh, there he goes.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Had it all
Look at
along.
that.
Never in doubt.
Easy.
CD Pro Pilot.
Triton
Hey,
also pulled it off.
I'm on short.
Times yesterday.
I'm on short final.
Okay, switching over to Peter really quick, and yeah, I'm gonna head to Le Bourget now as well.
Oh no,
just
I'm
getting to
on the
end of
other
our
side
time.
of the runway. I'm seeing Peter arrive directly for me. Oh no.
It's fine. I'll just roll out. Oh
おお
wait.
すげえ大きな通りだけど結構マイクロソフトフライトシミュレーターの大きな通りがこうやって植物に侵食されていてあ今日はぶつからないから大丈夫だ結構危険ここら辺の建物まだデータが聞きてなくてちょっと怪しい形状になっとるじゃん
And now you can call it bush trip.
Oh.
Grass.
It's fine.
Nice.
これセーヌ川なんかね割と言えば
I
セー
didn't
ヌ川だ
extend the floaters. Did one more. Remington
エッフェル
I'll
塔
tax it to you and see how bad it is. That
や
would
っ
be
ぱりエッ
hilarious.
フェル塔
You know,
美しい
there
の
was like a big hole in the ground along the path of where you were.
東京とはやっぱちょっと細いんだよな高いっつっても
Yeah, frame rates are not.
100万円外線のクーリーまずエッフェル
Paris is one of the
塔
most
くぐらねば何
populated
も始まらんじゃ
places
ろう
in Microsoft Flight Simulator with so many POIs and things to see. It's pretty taxing. In fact, if you ever upgrade your computer and you want to do like a stress test on your hardware,
これがシャン
this is
ゼ
one
リ
of the
ゼ
best
通り
places
な
you
ん
can
か
go
な
on
前
Microsoft
から
Flight
もくぐ
Simulator
ってくる人
to see kind of like a worst case scenario on PC performance when you're flying in the sim.
Not too flex, but mine was fine.
Yeah, you and your 4090 and whatever else you have.
I'm running 50 FPS,
Right?
right? What are these people complaining about?
もういっぱいランドマ
Right,
ー
here we
ク
go.
が
I'll
あ
get a
る
beautiful
の
view of Sacre Coeur to my just below my left wing there.
プレステコンコー
Was actually tied to the actual Paris air show.
It looks,
But you
Peter,
had
you
to-
found the
ド
only
どれだったっ
trees
け
in
な
the
あれ
area.
があったのこれはなんじゃい
Right?
サクレサクレクール寺院
So if you set your I'll
サクレとるんやろな
the date to the actual Paris air show, this airport transforms to the actual.
Yes.
Yeah, if you downloaded City Update 2, which we released
なんかちょっ
about
と
a
ま
month
ろや
ago,
かな感じ
maybe
です
not
な
quite a full month, but yeah, one of the features of that download was a bespoke version of Paris Le Bourget Airport. And as Simtom was mentioning, if the actual Paris air show is happening at the
ランドマ
time,
ーク多すぎてどうせ
the scenery in the
中
airport
間
will
や
change, and we'll have a lot of displays from like Airbus and a lot of the other major manufacturers. You'll see a lot of static displays. And I think you can actually change your in-sim time. You change it to a date and time that
建物
that
なんだ
Paris air show is running. It will show up.
Can we see a symptom of that scenery?
Yep, there they are. And those little paddocks, how do I call them? They actually look like that in real life. Because I
think
was
there's
lucky
a-
enough to be there this year.
I think there's an A350 and an A380 on static display that you can see in Microsoft Flight
じゃあ
Simulator.
住んでるノートルダム寺院ってや
Yeah,
つ
there's
かあ
the
れがじゃあ
A380.
I mean, there
ノ
has to
ー
be
ト
an
ルダムの
A380.
鐘のりがどうこうっていうのはここか
Is that the European Space Agency Ariane rocket?
It's the Ariane 5 in memoriam.
Yes, it's finished its
す
life
げ え
and Ariane 6 is still kind of being worked on, so they don't really have yeah.
All right, really quickly, I've just I've turned on the final. We're going to see another terrible landing again because I'm awful at tail draggers. That's one thing that in this sim I really need to get practice and get better at landing a tail dragger. That's a skill I do not have yet.
It's not easy. You got about 14 knots of wind, heading 189.
That's right.
I've actually heard from people who land like real pilots who fly real tail dragger aircraft that
ラン
like,
ドマーク
a
が多
bounce
す
or
ぎる
two is fine. Like that's like considered normal when you're landing a tail dragger, and you shouldn't feel bad if that happens.
あこれは
I'm
ル
just used
ー
to
ブル
flying
美
trench
術
mode
館
here,
か
where
もし
like
か
you
して
get
あ
a
の有名なあ
greasy
の
butter landing
ガラス
every
のピラ
time
ミッ
you
ド
do
み
it
たい
right.
なのはこれはなんじゃいなんか塔みたいなのがありますとあこれもなんか建物がありますとあれが凱旋門じゃな
Yeah.
Yes.
No pressure, CD. No pressure.
Sterile cockpit.
Anyway, did I already told you?
Yeah, you know, by tail dragger standards, that was okay.
少女
It
凱旋
was
門
okay.
Wow.
I love it. Sterile cockpit, and then you hear the stall horn.
The Jane Stallhorn. Yeah.
よーし
All right, let's go back to Simtom and take a look at the Bourget all done up for the Paris air show.
Hold on.
素晴らしい街じゃね、パリ。
It was interesting to see all the companies like Airbus.
で、アリアンロケットのある飛行場に降りるんだよね。
It says on all the doors by invitation only. We're like, okay. We're not gonna be doing any deals here today.
You're not gonna buy a plane now?
No. And then you see those actually like military people in their whole uniform. And my colleague and me were just there like shorts. Like it's fun.
ここにもなんか。
All right,
displays.
well, folks, this is going to bring us to the end of our Community Fly-In Friday for this week. To any French citizens in the chat, joyeux fête nationale. And
なんかよそ見しとったら墜落しちゃった。
For a stream very significant to Sim Tom, it's his country of Belgium, their national holiday next week. So Community Fly-In Friday next week is going to be in Belgium, and Sim Tom's going to have lots of great Belgian trivia and facts.
Well,
I will have none.
you will have all the facts.
Yeah, except that our fries are better, but other than that.
We are not
It
invited.
starts already. We're a week out, and it's already beginning. All right, well, let's go around the panel and say our goodbyes. Starting with Flying Cookie, our French native who's in the chat today. Any final thoughts for Bastille Day?
Well, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks, guys. If you ever go to France, there's too many things, too many places to visit. But just enjoy whatever you can, and joyeux 14 juillet.
All right, Sim Tom, over to you.
Well, this is just very fitting. Which aircraft is taxiing
Charles de
around.
Gaulle.
Oh, the Concorde, yeah. Is it in Air France livery?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Beautiful.
Well, just like always, great weekend. We'll see each other next week.
All right, and Peter.
Yeah, not much yet. Have a great weekend. See you next week. We'll see who's best then.
All right. Final word to me then. Chat, thank you so much for joining us. To everyone who flew along with us today, we're so glad to have you in the air with us. And for everyone who is just watching the stream and not flying, thank you for spending part of your Friday, or depending where you are in the world, possibly Saturday for you as well. Always appreciate the great turnout we get on every one of these events. So we'll see you same time, same place next week for the Belgian National Day edition of Community Fly-In Friday. And if you missed the earlier announcement, we also have some pre-recorded dev videos to share with you because there's a lot of people taking holidays in July from the dev team. We're not going to do a live stream with the developers in July, but they have taken some time out of their busy days to do some pre-recorded video, which we'll be showing you next week during Community Fly-In Friday. So thanks again, everyone. We'll see you next time. Signing off. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
ありがとうございました。お疲れ様でした。おお、そうか、こんなところにあったような気がするな。じゃあ降りるか。はい、また別のカーゴになってた。まあ、どっちから向こうから風が吹いているが、そんなに横風ではない。了解。広っ。